Hey there guys, AlphaKoala here. I noticed a couple of people were having a few issues with some of the questions, so I thought I'd go through them and sort of try and clarify them a little bit. The first question I noticed a lot of people were having trouble with was a question involving a force going this way, we'll call this a force going this way, and a force going this way, we'll call this B and C. Alright, now, in the question that everyone's been struggling with, you're given the value of C. Let's say this is 10 newtons. No, we'll say 10 meters. 10 meters. Okay, now the question basically asks, what should this angle be in order to minimize the length B? Knowing that the angle A acts at 30 degrees to angle C. So, what this requires is the use of an identity rule. And the identity rule is to minimize B from A, B must act perpendicular to the vector A, which means that this angle in here must in fact be 90 degrees. That will give it some time to cancel out the vertical translation while still adding a bit of horizontal translation. You can see this more clearly by going, say, I don't know, if it was sort of like that. Alright? So that's your 90 degree angle. You can see that's relatively short. If the angle were to be bigger, say down here, you can see the side B would be much, much longer than over here where the angle is in fact 90 degrees. Whereas if the angle were to be smaller than 90 degrees, we'll call that, I don't know, 40. You can see once again the length B is in fact bigger than when the length B is 90 degrees. So basically, to minimize B, you want the angle between A and B to be 90 degrees so that B is perpendicular to vector A. Alright, so that's one of the questions people have been having trouble with. Trying not to give away too much of the answer, but hopefully that will give everyone a tool to work with. And that is called the parallelogram law. Not sure if I'm spelling this right, so probably don't quote me on it. Parallelogram. It should be something along those lines. Now, the next question people have been having some trouble with was a question that looks sort of like this. You've got 3 different vectors, right? 2 of these unknown, say A and B unknown, and C is unknown. Now, we know that this goes straight down, this acts at, a certain angle, we know the angle, we know this one's angle because it's going straight down, and it says that the resultant between all 3 vectors acts at the same angle as C does. So your resultant's going to be here. And we know the magnitude of the resultant, let's just say that's going to be 2,000. Okay, so basically, to do this question, the first thing we got to do is try and add A and B together. Now, to add A and B together, it's going to be simplest to break these up into their components. Since A already has a component which is going to be straight down, that's going to be, we'll call it negative 600 or something. You can add that to B to calculate the A and B resultant. Sorry, the question also gives us that the resultant of A and B will act directly in line with C. So we'll call A plus B equals D. The question basically says that D and C will act at the same sort of angle. So we know that C is going this way, D is going this way as well, and C plus D is going to equal the resultant. So C plus D will equal 2,000. Because we broke these up into vectors to find D, you'll have the vectors for D, and using the vectors, you can use Pythagorean theorem to work out the magnitude of D. So once you know the magnitude of D, you can go C equals 2,000, take D, and then that will give you the magnitude of C. And you can use, tan theta or sine theta or anything to work out the angle, because once again, you already worked out D's components. And once again, I'm going to go with this very broadly because I'm trying not to give too much away because, I can't give you the answers, otherwise the video will simply just be removed. So I'm trying to sort of explain how to do the question in a way that doesn't really give you the answer, but hopefully gives you some advice. So hopefully from that you all gathered something. Now the final thing I wanted to go over was, there's been a lot of uncertainty as to how the marking will be. Basically, multiple choice questions, if it's a multiple choice question, you only get 1 attempt at it. Because if you had multiple attempts, obviously you just eventually guess the right answer. After 1 attempt, you lose, I think it's 100% of your mark. So make sure you really think before you lock in a multiple choice answer. Non-multiple choice answers you have unlimited attempts at, and you will not be penalized for taking multiple attempts. You will, however, be penalized for opening a hint or clicking give up. So don't click give up and don't open a hint. For vector diagrams, we actually have to physically drag the vectors on there or drag boxes in there. They are not counted as multiple choice, so you can have multiple attempts at that. All working for all your questions must be submitted by your assignment minder. So make sure as you go through, the questions, you kind of keep a track of all your working in a reasonably neat and legible manner. So, yeah, that's basically all for the video, and I hope that everyone can sort of get a little bit more understanding of the questions from that. Alpha out.